I'm going to show you how I use my own context operating system to rapidly iterate on my positioning and push it to my website in a tenth the time it would usually take me. Today, I'm going to be updating my positioning, pulling in disparate documents using to synthesize a master positioning document, which we're looking at right now, and then using that master positioning document to actually push that into my website. I'm going to show you how I create and use new cloud code skills, how I use a centralized source of truth, this go-to-market operating system, to compound those skills. So once I create it, I can use it over and over. And I'm going to show you how just how much faster this system makes me at shipping iterations to every single aspect of go-to-market and even development for the website stuff. Okay, so if you're watching this, you're watching on LinkedIn, which means I had to cut out about 30 minutes of content. If you want to watch all the rest of the content and get a much more in-depth understanding of how I work through this, go watch it on YouTube. Otherwise, you're going to get a quick TLDR of this. It's still useful, it's still valuable, just cut down. I want you to see how I actually use it day to day so you can get a good sense of how this is valuable. The big thing I'm going to be working on today is that I've been iterating a lot on my positioning, which you can see here. This is kind of the notes I just threw together this morning, right? So V1, V2. This has been through a lot of iteration and talking to people, talking to clients. I'm really grateful for everyone who's kind of helped me think this through. But what I want to do now is I want to, number one, distill this down, update my current positioning in the context architecture, and then I'm actually going to use this to update the copy on my website, since that is pretty out of date at this point. So what you can't see right now, but in this context operating system, it actually sits my website directory. So I can say, hey, go to the landing page of my website and use updated positioning and the copywriting skill or whatever, right? And use it to write new copy for the website. I have a bunch of positioning docs scattered all over the place. Help me take inventory and think through what to work on, what to change, why, how, right? And it kind of gave me this, what do I call it? Chronological. That's the word. Chronological ordering things. So now I'm going to transcribe and kind of tell it what to do. So what I want is the newest positioning around that reflection I gave you is what we should focus on. I think that's the most well thought out. But I also want to pull in the metaphors and a lot of the good work in the positioning document V1. And I do think option A is the right place for the positioning. So here's what I want to happen. The positioning in, where is it? Right here. The documents in the positioning directory in the foundation, those are junk. Those were just automatically generated when we created the knowledge graph and used it to create the operational level. Why don't you just delete those and we'll recreate them once we have the centralized and updated positioning using the positioning document V1 and the positioning reflection.md. So what I'd like you to do is pull in just execute the logistics of that. So delete the documents and move everything into that directory. And then from there, we can start on mixing and matching and refactoring the actual documents themselves. So you notice in that whole process, the reason I showed you retranscribing is I want you to think about how free flowing that was, and I literally walked through the exact process I would take myself, so I can give it to the agent, so it can follow my instructions step by step. If I just said, "Yeah, move them into the directory and edit them," well, like how? Why? What's the purpose? That's really important to think about. And what we'll do now, though, is take this transcript and paste this in, and now it knows what to do. So basically, even before I get into any editing of the actual positioning, I'm setting up the workspace to do so. That is really, really important for working with any context, whether it's in your code base or in, in this case, my context operating system. So I'm going to do this editing, or excuse me, I'm going to let this run, and I'll get back to you in a sec. Just want to show you a little example here. I had it kind of execute the context logistics, and then I said, all right, then call the skill. So this is what calling a skill looks like. Um, right. And you see here, this is the skill. And then as needed, it will reference the copyright frameworks. So I was right for the first pass at this because I had to break down the generation into multiple different steps here, right? You can see 78 editions, 83 editions. Um, it is significantly higher quality than if I had it just one shot this thing. Because what it did, it pulled in all of the context that I had already reviewed myself and looked good to me, and pushed it into a narrative here, or not pushed. Maybe you could say sew together in a narrative, whatever, weave it together as a narrative. Anyways, it took this analogy that I had in my other document and put it as the core story, basically. I'm not going to read this all out to you because, ironically enough, this is not about positioning. This is about context engineering and my context operating system. This is like a good job of starting with the TLDR and then working through the different pain points, outcomes, who do I do this for, why it works, why it matters, my service tiers, all that stuff. So I'm not going to keep scrolling down, but because it's the work in progress case studies, it actually cited that I want to make sure they have their time. Um, what I am using it to do is, hey, go. Saying, hey, go pull in from my content, um, and figure out if there's any phrases or ideas in there that are not um, reflected in this. And I want you to basically enrich the content. So we're going to do one more context enrichment. And then what I'm probably going to do is um, clean this up a little bit, and remove any redundancy, repetition, or anything that is unclear. Let's see what it spat out. Enrichment search strategy. That's cool. I didn't ask to make a document. I love it. So look, it went and got the summary of, or the first 20, what's it called, 20 rows, not rows, 20 lines of all of these pieces of content in here, and he's going to run a search to pull in concepts that I can use to enhance my positioning. And this is probably not super high value. Positioning is best done talking to customers in your market, not your own content. But I just wanted to, it's a fun context thing to try and mess around with. So I'm going to run this, and then I'm going to do a final cleanup, and then I'm going to show you how yeah, see, look at that. I mean, that's insane. You can just run those searches like that. This is why Cloud Code, actually, this is why agentic search with grep and glob is so effective, because you're searching across the entire corpus, right? Anyways, next up is applying these changes to my website. So I'll show you that in here in a sec. So I'll run those queries. Here's the kind of enrichments it decided to fold in. So I don't like all of these, but I do think it brought in some useful concepts that I have talked about. Like, this is excellent. This is very true. And I'm trying to think about how to describe it. It is specific and concise, which is valuable when you are trying to get AI to do what you want. Yeah. I know it's abstract. I'm just trying to think of ways to describe like the qualitative aspect of context engineering. Anyways, so then it took this copywriting skill and basically did an audit of the enriched version. No jargon, emotional language, right? We're trying to tell a story here. I know this is jargon. I love it. I love the phrasing though. Palantir can use ontology. Maybe I can use applied epistemology. Anyways, so this is the report I produced. I'm going to say yes, approve it, and then simplify as much as possible based off of this audit. So I guess we can call that pattern context enrichment and auditing to distill. Because right now you're going to see it reduce. What do I think of that? Yeah, I mean, I mentioned that stuff in other places, so that's fine. But yes, and I want you to think of this as so. One of the pieces I write about, like you were so responsible for your writing and your thinking. That's why I spent so much time, you know, writing this positioning here and doing multiple iterations. All this is doing is helping me take the very best taste and principles in understanding for this given craft around copywriting from Claude Hopkins and David Ogilvy and let me borrow it so I can improve my copywriting and this is positioning in the process. So just to wrap up, I went from disparate positioning documents that were raw notes, different Claude code sessions, um, just kind of scattered, and I turned them into a master positioning document. And I also enriched it with my context or my content that I published, and then I processed everything through using skills I created using the principles from the best copywriters in the world to produce a high quality positioning document that I'm very happy with for this first iteration. And then since it's all living in the same source of truth, my website, my context OS, everything, I said, hey, Claude, go take that and push this into my website. Plan to refactor it. In fact, since I didn't have the skill, right, I didn't have the instruction set to make Claude a good visual designer, I just said, hey, make a skill, and then we can reuse it continuously. And it aligns with my brand and visual design preferences over time. And refactored my website. Not perfect, but was eons faster than doing anything by hand. And it listened and actually took my positioning and used my existing visual design. I'm trying to find a way. I'm missing the language to communicate how crazy this is. Because every single thing I do in this system, I can go and reference it back and reuse it. And it just keeps on compounding on itself and keeps on getting better. And when I create a new skill for a spec-driven development, then the next 10 features I plan out, I'll benefit from it. Everything compounds on itself. It gets smarter the more you use it, and you iterate faster and faster and faster. It's a very different way of working, and you should still always leave time for just writing and clarifying your thoughts because everything was downstream of that. But this is such a insane force multiplier. I am struggling to find the words to communicate it effectively. So this is my open ask then. How would you describe a system like this? That's my there's my call to action right there. Um, anyways, I appreciate you watching. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.